private imperial threat.
When this project was first announced, we weren't sure if it will be as good as the Villenueve films have been, but episode 1 of Dune Prophecy put all those worries to rest. Over an hour of great acting, direction, pacing, and overall story. Episode 1 introduced many of the core conflicts that set up events that occur thousands of years into the future. We have an imperial conspiracy, a secret war, and the Kwisatz Haderach program unfolding at the same time. We see the reason behind the Bene Gesserit's insistence on controlling the world and what will happen should they fail in their mission, or worse, make misinterpretations. The Prophecy of Tiran-Arafel is afoot, and the Sisterhood is nowhere near being the universal power brokers that they are in the main series. That much becomes painfully clear at the end of the episode, so in this video we will break down what that means and how Dune Prophecy connects the films to all the books in the franchise. So, spoiler warning because there will be a lot of those in this video. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means an awful lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
To foster the right royal unions and cultivate rulers we could...
The Bene Gesserit breeding program is already in danger. Dune Prophecy is mainly experienced through the perspective of Valia Hart, an ambitious Bene Gesserit initiate who rose to become Reverend Mother by killing the competition. Typical Harkonnen stuff, we know, but what's interesting is the fact that Valia is the innovator of the voice. She is also the one who is in charge of what the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood is actually all about. The Kwisatz Haderach program, the opening sequence of Dune Prophecy shows us Valia attending to the death and funeral of her mentor and spiritual mother, Rakella. On her deathbed, Rakella experienced a prescient vision, showed her what will happen over the course of the series. It showed us Kasha's death, the failure of Yanez's betrothal, a sandworm swallowing a castle, and Golden Lion Throne being at the center of it all. She charged Valia with growing the Sisterhood's power with every tool available to them to prevent the Reckoning from destroying them. Rakella's other daughter, Dorothea, wished for the Sisterhood to remain the quasi-religious crew of truth-sayers that they'd been posing as since the fall of the thinking machines, but Valia wanted more, so she used the boys on her Bene Gesserit sister and made her take her own life, effectively taking control of the entire Sisterhood. She expanded their teachings to include martial arts and other methods of honing the mind and body, and most importantly, she kept the Bene Gesserit breeding program going. Dorothea had nearly destroyed the gene matrix that held the key to the Sisterhood's dominance over the universe, but Valia saved it and expanded her efforts to see one of her own seated on the Golden Lion Throne. We all know that the Bene Gesserit sister that goes on to realize her vision is none other than Paul Atreides, but it looks like Dune Prophecy is going to show us the first attempt that Bene Gesserit made at controlling fate itself. Valia is hyper-fixated on getting the current Padishah Emperor Javisho Carino's daughter into their order because she believes Yanez is the answer to her troubles. That is why she supports her marriage to the heir of House Riches. He is a boy of 9 and he has an attitude that matches his father's, but he's the only suitable match that would give Yanez enough time to train and become a Bene Gesserit. Valia believed that by making her one of them, they would have succeeded in breeding the leader that they have always needed, but the events of episode 1 cast a major shadow over those beliefs. The boy that Yanez was meant to marry ends up getting assassinated, and so does the Bene Gesserit sister that was instrumental in swinging the princess over to their side. The breeding matrix was rather particular in stating that this would be the match that ensured Bene Gesserit control over the throne, so this development throws everything to the wayside, but that isn't uncommon for this series. Paul Atreides himself was supposed to be Paula in his marriage to Fade Rautha and would have produced the Kwisatz Haderach instead of making him the Kwisatz Haderach. Human intervention takes the carefully woven threads of fate and slices them apart like a hot knife through butter, which is exactly what has happened in the show. The question now becomes why Valia Harkonnen is so hell-bent on seeing a sister seated on the throne in her lifetime. We know the Bene Gesserit to be an extremely patient and manipulative order, which has implanted religious tales on planets all across the known universe just as a fail-safe measure for its sisters. It took them 10,000 years to reach the point where they could produce their prophet, and in that entire time, they carefully treaded upon the cobblestones of fate. Valia's insistence is much like Gaia's Mohiam's, and it would end up having the same results. Yanez already has her sights set upon the man she really wants for herself. Karen Atreides, their passionate lovemaking before her marriage is set in stone, could end up throwing the Bene Gesserit breeding program, of course, of centuries, and it's no wonder that once again, we've got an Atreides sticking it to a Harkonnen. It will be extremely interesting to see where and how the Bene Gesserit breeding program regains its footing, because Dune Prophecy takes place place in the same universe as the Villenueve films. They're all part of a single continuity, but we can't say with full certainty that love will end up derailing things once again. They will certainly complicate matters that need no complications, and seeing what that looks like is what has us hooked in for episode 2. But speaking of hooking us in, who is Desmond Hart? What does he want? One of the most intense scenes from the first episode has to be the penultimate one because it led to a development that was hinted at early on. The Bene Gesserit Sisterhood has used its misdirection and manipulation of the Padishah Emperor to convince him that marrying his daughter to the richest family is the right move. They have observed all the subtleties that are characteristic of them to broker an arrangement that ultimately leads them to the drug that unlocks it all: spice. We see the sandworms in both the Bene Gesserit visions that are explored in this episode, and that can only mean one thing. Arrakis was just as relevant 10,000 years ago as it is in the age of Muad'Dib. We even see a Fremen bartender serving drinks and drugs at an underground club in the imperial capital planet, so you can expect our beloved desert warriors making an explosive comeback to the series. But one character that shouldn't have come back is Desmond Hart, because by his own admission, his entire harvesting platoon had been vanquished, and he himself had died and been reborn. Desmond Hart is much like Duncan Idaho, not just in character design, but in his story as well. He's the only survivor from Arrakis that the Emperor has met in person, and he possesses unique knowledge about the planet and its people that could assist Javicio in his reign immeasurably. But for some reason, he seems to be far more interested in beating the drums of war. At first, Desmond was portrayed as a rather rugged survivor of the harshest of terrains known to man, but as the episode played out, it became clear that he has an agenda that goes beyond being a political advisor. The unsettling look he gave to Kasha when she was evaluating him for falseness told us that maybe this guy Desmond had figured out a way to cheat the truth-saying protocols, because he knew exactly what happened to him at Arrakis, but he refused to explain it in the presence of the witch. Well, not exactly refused as much as omitted, but you get our point. He even goes so far as to reveal to the Emperor that many in his empire long for a return of the age of thinking machines, and plants the seed of doubt in his mind by claiming the Sisterhood was hiding things from him and war was inevitable. His assessment of the richest family being arrogant overachievers is correct, but we had no idea how far he was willing to go to prove the same to the Emperor. When Javicio told him that he would believe in God if he got his daughter out of this predicament, Desmond decided to play God for him, and he killed Inez's betrothed in the most gruesome manner possible. He also somehow managed to kill Kasha in the exact same way, though she was off-world at the time. This coordinated assault, which he triggered by touching his temple, makes one thing clear: whatever Desmond is, he's not entirely human. There are a couple of possibilities when it comes to his mysterious rebirth story and the powers that he was able to use. The real Desmond Hart is dead, and the man we're seeing in the story is a Tleilaxu Ghola. The Tleilaxus are an offshoot group of humanity infamous for their horrifying foray into genetic engineering. The main thing they're known for in the Dune universe is being the creators of Gholas, artificial beings reconstructed from the cells of diseased individuals. But the one issue with Gholas, especially this far back in the timeline, is the fact that they can't retain their original memories. Most Gholas are entirely new beings and need to undergo an intense psychological experience to unlock their old memories. Desmond appears to be fully aware of who he was, and the likeliness of him being a Ghola appears to be a little low on the list for us. It's much more likely that he's a face dancer that has assumed the likeness of Desmond. Face dancers are Tleilaxu that have been bred for the purpose of assassination, and they're said to be so good at mimicking other individuals' likeness that only the Bene Gesserit can tell the difference between them and the original person. Considering the fact that they've only been around for a century and a half and the voice has been a thing for about a fifth of that time period, it's natural to think that the Bene Gesserit skills aren't at the level they reached during Muad'Dib's era. Kasha knew that Desmond was telling the truth about his time in Arrakis, but she also suspected something larger at play, only she couldn't put her finger on exactly what that was. If Desmond is a face dancer, that would be it, because his truth would then be coming out of a false face. And the Tleilaxu are notorious for making attempts to rule the universe via subterfuge like the one we've just described, but there is a third and far worse possibility with regards to Desmond Hart's sudden interest in political anarchy. He is an Ixian. The planet of Ix is rather remote, and the Ixians are among the most law-breaking citizens of the Imperium. Their society's main export is technology, and oftentimes their development skirts the line between human and artificial intelligence. The latter has been outlawed in the Imperium since the machine wars, but Desmond's lack of surprise at the richest kid's possession of a mechanical toy tells you that he knows a lot more than he's letting on. Also, right before he kills Pruitt, the kid's toy disappears from his hand, suggesting that it was somehow involved in his demise. In the novels, the riches are right beside the Ixians in terms of technology and how they view and use it. Though it feels improbable, it's possible that at some point during his brief interaction with Kasha, he implanted a device into her body that roasted her alive upon activation. He killed two birds with one stone by mind-prying Pruitt riches and Kasha at the same time, but the question of his identity still remains. Who was he before he became this instigator, and why is he doing all this instigating? We will find out in the upcoming episodes, but our money is on him being either a Tilaxu or Ixian insurgent. Speaking of making discoveries, what did the Emperor see from the memory disk? Desmond Hart's role in episode 1 was to show the Emperor that he was on his side and then use that trust to turn him against the Bene Gesserit. There is a small moment in the episode that can explain why he wants this, but there is a much better explanation available to us all. Video footage of the attack on Desmond. After taking care of a massive but ultimately pointless dinner party, Emperor Javicio has trouble sleeping. He has a lot on his mind, and with his uncooperative wife, his free-spirited daughter, and his entire empire counting on him to deliver the spice melange, Javicio regularly sends harvesting teams to Arrakis, and they regularly come back with far fewer members or not at all. He was at his wit's end trying to figure out how to make the process safer, which is why he took such an interest in Desmond, the first survivor of a spice attack that managed to straggle himself back to the imperial capital. No doubt his knowledge would prove to be invaluable, but instead all it does is make Javicio even more suspicious of the people around him. Desmond plants the idea that the Bene Gesserit are controlling him in Javicio's head, and then as proof, he delivers video footage of his supposed death. In it, we see him standing up to an approaching sandworm ready to greet death, but then suddenly we see concern on the Emperor's already furrowed brow, and for a split second, the sandworm looks more like a spaceship. At one point in the episode, the topic of the Sisterhood's operations in Arrakis is brought up, but Valia shuts that down almost immediately, as if even speaking of it would even put them in danger. We can't be 100% sure, but what we think happened there is pretty simple. The Bene Gesserit attacked Desmond's convoy and stole the spice for themselves. We know the Bene Gesserit have connections with a spacing guild and are close allies with the navigators. It's likely that they've gotten ships and crews from those guys in exchange for giving them a cut of the spice, which was essential to the powers of both parties involved. But why would they need spice, you ask? Well, it's a simple answer. Really, for the pre-science. The spacing guild needs it for navigation and one of the most important rituals that a Bene Gesserit sister goes through to become a Reverend Mother is enduring the spice agony. The sister in question is made to ingest the water of life, which is a pure spice concentrate regurgitated by sandworms. This poisonous water, when successfully neutralized within their system, gives them access to their ancestors' memories, but only from the female line. The male line often appears as a dark cloud or a specter in their sight, which is one of the reasons why they started the Kwisatz Haderach program. It's possible, likely even, that the Bene Gesserit attacked Desmond's convoy and stole its contents for their own reasons, which they're more than capable of doing. Episode 1 was all about exposing the beliefs of the Emperor as hollow compromises, so him finding out that the priestess he relied on for counsel so much was actually betraying him the entire time is going to have some dire consequences. We've seen Valia getting questioned about the nature of the Bene Gesserit in the promotional material for the series, where she simply states that she is a teacher to young girls. Why would she need to justify herself like that unless her treachery had been exposed? We think for whatever Javicio saw in that memory file is what will form the basis for his suspicions of the Sisterhood, which should surface sometime next episode.
I see, Mother. I see.
What did Valia Harkonnen see at the end of the episode? At the beginning of the Dune Prophecy, Valia Harkonnen talks about how history has vilified her house, but she puts her faith in prophecy. Right before she passes away, Raquella tells her that she is the one person who will see the burning truth about the future of the universe, and in that future, we see images of the bloody hand and steps that Paul saw in the first movie, as well as embers that reach the stars and a pair of blue eyes that stare back into the souls of the sisters who have these visions. This pair of blue eyes emits a mechanical whirring sound every time it comes comes into focus and is clearly being positioned as the ultimate antagonist of the series. The Bene Gesserit are preparing for Tiran-Arafel, but they have no idea how it will come for them and when. Until the end of the episode, as she watches her sister's body get mutilated on its own, Valia gets that prophetic look in her eyes and she says, "I see, Mother, I see." This is a clear callback to the opening sequence of the episode, but the question is, what exactly did she see? There are multiple theories regarding this kicking about in our head, but the two that make the most sense are either her seeing the Kwisatz Haderach from the future, or her witnessing a machine-like entity which was somehow attained pre-science, right after Raquel's death, when Valia is laying down her plan to take over the Sisterhood and reform it by any means necessary. The topic of the tyrant comes up, and Tiran-Arafel is associated with him. In the novel continuity of Dune, only one character has earned this moniker, and that's Leto Atreides. The second, the son of Paul Muad'Dib. Leto was an abomination that could access both his ancestral memory streams since birth, and unlike Paul, he lived a long life. Such a long life that he became an actual deity to many cultures within the known universe. And because of this, his ability to part the veil of memory and space-time is unmatched. If the Tiran-Arafel that is being referred to in the show is specific to the Sisterhood, then it makes sense that Leto is the one staring back at them, because his rule effectively sidelines the Bene Gesserit and forces them to evolve out of their controlling mindset. He was also known to use Ixian technology to preserve his own thoughts, so perhaps the mechanical wearing is a conflation of that trait of Leto's. But this isn't the God Emperor, then the only other entity it can be is Erasmus, the thinking machine that ends up merging with the ultimate Kwisatz Haderach. The machine wars have been over for a century and a half, but even Frank Herbert's books always referred to how they would eventually return and have another go at annihilating organic life. In God Emperor of Dune, the Ixians in particular are identified as the creators of this new breed of thinking machines, but it is also stated that they can no longer create Arafel. This prediction of his ultimately comes true when the ultimate Kwisatz Haderach decides to merge with the AI entity called Erasmus and unites humans and machines once and for all. Because this happened in Brian Herbert's run with the Dune IP, many people tend to put less stock in it, but Dune Prophecy is based entirely off of Brian's expansion of his father's work. The entire opening sequence of episode 1 was pretty much lifted from his backstory novels about the Sisterhood, and it's only after the perspective shifts in the proper timeline that the adaptation begins. Thinking machines are a major part of the series already, so if one of them invades the ego memory space just to terrify the Sisterhood into making all the mistakes that unleashes upon the world, it'll be a stroke of genius. One thing we can say with complete certainty though, whatever Valia Hart saw is going to shape the future of this particular adaptation of the Dune franchise forever. She's been positioned as the figure that would shape the Bene Gesserit into the mystical force that we know it as today, and her vision is bound to have a massive impact on the series going forward. Let us know what you guys think she witnessed down in the comment section, because Marvel's verdict, that's all we've got for you guys for now. Dune Prophecy is set to become one of the most cinematically stunning sci-fi shows of all time, and that much was made evident by the first episode. That is why we will be covering it for its entire run, so if you're looking for some place to get started with the show's lore, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share our content with your fellow Dune enthusiasts. We will see you guys in the next one, and until then, try avoiding drinking anything that looks suspiciously blue and is kept in a glass bottle that looks like a vial, since you're not a Reverend Mother, chances are it will kill you. And we don't want that to happen now, do we?